have fun pre-rolling whatever we want.
What?
Man.
What?
I don't know.
What?
I don't know if there's something we need to talk about.
I gotta drink a little bit of water. I had a Swiss cake roll. In the
What is
intermission.
that?
Sorry.
A ho-ho? Swiss cake
Oh.
roll?
Gotcha.
Don't apologize. They're delicious.
I don't know.
Are they good for you? Probably not. But they are
Pretty sure anything
delightful.
called a cake roll is not going to be good for you. I don't care if it's Swiss or not.
It's but Josh, do you seriously not know what a Swiss cake roll is? I mean,
I've
again,
never
I
heard
said
that term.
they're called ho-hos in some
Yeah.
places, but it's like a chocolate cake. It's got like a sort of a frosting in the center, some sort of like cream or vanilla frosting, and it's rolled up, and then they dip
Okay.
the whole thing in sort of like that
Oh,
candy chocolate.
okay.
And
Okay.
it's just a little like you can eat
Like
it
a
in
pumpkin
like
roll.
Yes, but significantly smaller, and you can eat it in
Oh,
like
okay.
a bite or two, and they're delicious.
Oh, gotcha.
They're delightful. You can get other like they do strawberry shortcake rolls too. It's like a little
Okay.
Debbie snack cake thing.
Yeah. Nice.
So they're very good.
Put your cake roll in your cake hole.
I did. I
That's
did
your
that
mouth,
thing.
by the way.
But it did
That's where cake goes.
it did kind of like mess up like it kind of like my throat now. I had to drink some water, and I will probably have to sip on water. But
Oh, because
all right.
the chocolate stuff on the outside.
Yeah.
It's filmy.
Yeah.
Delicious.
A little bit. Delicious and filmy, which is probably not a great descriptor of food things.
Love that chocolate film when it coats your
It's the best.
tongue.
It's not
You can
nearly
just
as good
scrape
as
it
Backyard
off.
Baseball 97.
It's
though.
like clear.
Guys, you missed it. Mark was just wrapped with like pre-show, like or pre this recording. He got distracted and he told us he thinks Backyard Baseball 97 is coming back, and he's very excited about that.
I'm still down this rabbit hole. It's coming back. Its releases tomorrow.
What? Oh,
Yeah.
Draft that in your Metacritic league.
I don't know if I can. Can I?
No.
Oh, no, I can't.
It'd
All right.
be, it'd be a very clear remake. So unless your league allows that.
I don't know.
Two, it is you probably can't get it in your you missed the draft window. Your commissioner, however,
Jake Martin.
could make an exception.
Brand. Let's see. I've already filled up all my slots of quality games. So,
how competitive is your league?
It is. So it's Jake Martin, who y'all know, Landry Smith, who y'all know, and then the two guys from Nintendo Watcher, now Watcher Gaming. They've been on Quick Play a few times, but they're connections of through Jake. So it's 5 of us. We're kind of semi-competitive. Like, it's more just a fun thing for us all to talk about and kind of talk through. Landry is just crushing us all, like like you could not expect anything else. I'm looking to come in a strong second, but Landry just, let's see. Landry has Final Fantasy VII, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, Metaphor Refantasio. He now has Animal Well.
Gosh, how did you guys let him get all of that?
I don't tell you, man. He had got Astrobot in there too.
What?
He did pick Star Wars Outlaws. That brought him down a little bit.
I'm pulling up ours. Like Micah is dominating both of the leagues that I'm in with him. Let's see. He right now has 114.32 actual points. Just cool. Now, and he snuck a couple in there. Now I kind of, there were a couple in there that I probably should have like tried to snatch out from underneath him, but I was kind of like, but he's got the Silent Hill 2 remake. He got Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. He's got Astrobot.
Oh, yeah.
He got Stellar Blade. Unicorn Overlord. Like he's just coming. Like his lowest scoring game right now is a 71. He doesn't have any negatives, and he's just like, he's also got Lego Horizon Adventures coming in, and the unannounced. Well, that one's, he's probably gonna just sit on that. We do keepers in our league, so
Okay.
if you have something that doesn't come out, you can actually hold on to it for next year. The
Oh,
only
nice.
thing that was possibly going to sort of like ding him was Indiana Jones, and when that got pushed out till next year.
Wait, isn't Indiana Jones still coming out this year?
I-
In December, right?
No, I thought that was pushed back to next year. No.
The Avowed was.
About okay. Oh, so like he's a little worried about that, I think, but
Gotcha.
I don't think that's gonna, like, he's got a substantial lead over pretty much everybody.
Dude,
Adam,
what a crappy name. I'm sorry.
Avowed.
Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I also haven't watched trailers and stuff like that. I don't know what it's talking about, but like that does not. Raiders of the Lost Ark sounds awesome. The Temple of Doom sounds awesome. Oh my gosh, why can't I think of the third one?
Last Crusade
With the chalice. Yeah, Last Crusade. Yeah, that
Good-
sounds
good
like
name.
fun. Dial of Destiny sounds stupid.
Yeah. I want to watch it. I haven't seen it yet.
What was the fourth one? Oh, I've heard nothing.
The Kingdom of the
horrible.
Crystal Skull.
Okay. Like, even that, it sounds weird, but
Yeah.
it sounds intriguing. Like, it sounds like a cereal.
Yeah.
Not breakfast cereal. But...
Definitely not aliens.
Right. Yeah,
No
there
way.
you go.
Definitely not.
The
aliens.
Great Circle. What
There's
are
a
they
reason.
on? Come on,
It's-
man.
Apparently, the a bunch of landmarks, like ancient landmark wonders of the world, make a circle around the globe, and that's the
Yeah.
Great Circle. I feel like you could come up with something a little more creative than the Great Circle.
Come on. Even, the I'm trying to think of an adjective that you could put on that. The precariousness of the Great Circle or something. No, you wouldn't use that, but even just something, dude. Man, that's weird. Or how about that? Even in the perfect circle, something like that. I don't know, man. It just
It's like just right click,
this is
look
a
at synonyms
horrible
for
name.
great,
Right.
synonyms for circle.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
There we go. Listen better.
AI. Can you think of a better name?
Massive, singularly
Chalice.
single plane sphere.
Montana James and the Fantastic Sphere.
The fantastic entrapment. I don't know. The globe-sized lasso. Oh, it's not great. It's not great. But
Indiana Jones and the Circle of Secrets. Indiana
Ooh.
Jones and the Enigma of the Eternal Circle. Indiana Jones and the Arcane Circle.
Oh,
Indiana Jones and the Lost Circle.
did you feed
These
that
are
in
all
the
literally
ChatGPT?
AI. Bing AI.
But
I just said rename Indiana Jones and the Great Circle to something more intriguing. And those are some of the instructions.
what was
some
it?
of the
It was like the
suggestions.
first or second one that you ripped
Circle
off
of
there.
Secrets, Enigma of the Eternal Circle, Arcane Circle, Circle of Power, or Lost
I think
Circle.
the Enigma of the Eternal Circle actually has like
That alliteration. Yeah.
a pretty.
Enigma of the Eternal Circle.
It's a mouthful, but yeah, it's got a little bit of alliteration going on there, and yeah.
You know, it's also an Enigma of the Eternal Circle. A little game called Outer Wilds.
Heyo.
Yes. Let's get on to this. So yes, thank you for keeping us on track. So
It was just a great opportunity for a segue.
yeah. All right, and we're back. All right, folks. So if you're still with us here, I think just to sort of throw this up here, we will try to do a little bit of spoiler-free talk. but it is
that gets complicated.
I was gonna say it's very, very hard to talk about this game in any sort of
Mhm.
like meaningful capacity without just talking about spoilers. Um, so like here's the thing: if you are even slightly interested in playing this game, stop listening, go play the game, and then maybe come back to this. Um, it's it's not a terribly long game. You don't have to spend 44 hours like I did in it. Um, but that's just more of like my sort of like unhingedness where I was just like poking into all sorts of like dark little crannies that, and I was trying to brute for like, but anyways, like I'll talk about some of that later, but it's definitely sort of a thing where it's not a terribly long game. Uh, it can be, um, but I would just say like if you are again at all interested in playing this game, stop listening to us and just go play it and then come back.
Well, okay, you say that, but you haven't even described anything about the game. Now, you've said that it's hard to talk
It's
about
all
it without
spoilers.
spoilers, and I
It's
totally
all
understand.
spoilers. You're spoiling
But
you're spoiling everything, even sort of like even mentioning it, Joshua. You're spoiling it.
even mentioning that it's a video game,
Yeah,
it's
you
spoiled.
spoiled it. Spoiled
I
it.
thought I was gonna watch it. You do a lot of reading.
Now, I do think, yeah, there is a little bit of room to talk about this, but I was just sort of throwing that up early on,
Right.
so that people are primed for that.
Yes. If I could say, I think the reason that it's hard to talk about this game without immediately diving into spoilers is because the primary purpose of what you do in this space exploration game, so that's what you're doing, space exploration, first person, um, is is learning about what is going on and what you are able to do. So exploring the universe that you're in or the galaxy that you're in, exploring planets, and then learning what you're doing and why you're doing it. That is the entire purpose of the game. So we can't really go into much more because then that is actually giving you answers to what you ought to be finding out as you play the game. So,
Right.
I do think just and again, this is sort of it's something that I think it's spoiler free and it's kind of a broad enough statement, but that this game gives you everything that you will need. Like it sort of the one caveat that I would just like, and maybe this is kind of spoilery, but I've never seen a game sort of like every time I looked up a hint or like sort of like used like a guide to figure something out, I felt immediately stupid because I had all the pieces prior to that. Like I just hadn't put them together yet. Um, I think this game, so it's one of those games where I think it is kind of remarkable in that capacity. Um,
Mhm.
that, but yeah, even there, it's like I feel like I'm starting to just like to further explain that we would have to like really kind of get into the nitty gritty. So, Mark, do you have any
Sure.
sort of spoiler free? Well. In addition to that, this was your pick,
Yeah.
and I think so. It's like I'd love to hear like if you have any spoiler free sort of commentary or preface. But
Yeah.
like I think sort of in kicking, like I'd also like to know why you picked this for us. Um, that that's a question that I think is like
That is a good question.
I mean,
Yeah.
besides the fact that this is one of your favorite games. So,
Of course. Yeah. It is. This is a very unique game, and I think there's like it got a lot of like game design nerds heads spinning.
Yeah.
And I think it's if
and
you are
rightfully so. Rightfully so.
I'll shout out Jordan Lightheart, friend of each of our shows, loves this game too. So if take his word for it. I will say I kind of don't think you should go in totally blind for just prepare yourself. Like, know there's a ship log, use the ship log, and take your time on your first when you wake up and on Timber Hearth. Take those, you'll kind of learn a lot of stuff that you need to know. there. But so 2 reasons I wanted to have y'all play it. One, well, reason number 0, I love the game and I want y'all to love it too. Reason 1 is that kind of like it's a game design, like, I don't want to say master class. It's kind of, because that's a more subjective term. Like, it's incredibly complex, incredibly intricate, incredibly fascinating. But reason 2 is also kind of like, this skips all the way to the end, but I want to talk about the ending and how we wrestle through that as Christians. And so that's kind of why I wanted to have y'all play it. I can, if you want me to, I can start talking a little bit about like my initial experience with it, because I played it way back in 2019 and then replayed it this time. And kind of, if it's helpful, I can,
Should we throw up do you think it's relevant for us to just throw up the spoiler warning and just say, like, here's the part where you guys probably ought to dip out? Or
I can share this without spoiling too much.
Okay.
And then so that wall can go up in just a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
So in July 2019, IGN posted an editorial by Tom Marks that was titled "Outer Wilds Has Changed the Way I Think About Death." And so I don't remember if I actually read that article or not, but I didn't remember any of it by the time I actually played the game. But the thumbnail of the review, kind of linked in the article, was like, had a little astronaut, like cartoon astronaut playing a banjo, and I thought, that is cool. This is a space exploration game with banjo music that had like deeper messages, and I just said, like, I'm in. How do I play it? I can't. It's like on PC and Xbox. So fast forward to 2020. We are in the COVID times, and I'm playing a lot more video games because I had a lot more time. And I did the math where I realized I could buy a used Xbox One and get Game Pass and play all the games I wanted to play that way. I'd had a Switch currently. But also, alongside that, I could play Outer Wilds, which is a game I had my eye on for a while. So I started off Outer Wilds in April 2020, kind of piddled around for about a dozen hours. I'd read something in the game or find something significant, and there would be a text that pops up that says, like, added to the ship log. I kept thinking, like, I'm not going to read all that again. So I just never checked the ship log, and just got to the point where I decided, like, I am not smart enough nor patient enough to actually figure this out on my own. So I just started following a step-by-step guide on Polygon. And then on like my last day of playing it, I actually look in the ship log and find out that, like, it's a whole like corkboard string hint system telling you, like, hey, you should check out more here. Hey, there's the recap of what you discovered here. How it all ties to this thing over here. Like, it like is meant to tell you where to go next and like kind of give you some direction, rather than just like keep this all in your noggin and figure out the puzzle on your own. So I was pretty mad at myself that I didn't know that. I think I would have needed a guide at some point anyway. But essentially I wanted to wait to where I forgot enough that I could play it again. And so while I'm like singing its praises the whole time, like kind of just still in the vibes alone. I love the soundtrack. I love just the aesthetic of it. It is fascinating. I would just kind of launch myself into space every so often and just kind of hang out in space. So I replayed I replayed it in preparation for this. And this, I think, is kind of where the first wall of spoilers goes up. If y'all have any thoughts on that.
I do have just a couple thoughts before we dip into spoilers. That's really interesting what you say about the way that you played the game, because I had somewhat of a similar experience, not entirely. But just before we dip into spoilers, two thoughts really quick. One, and I think I lost it. In terms of gameplay, yeah, this is at least one of the thoughts. I can't remember what the other one was. In terms of gameplay, like I said, first-person space exploration. That's what it was. Sorry, fumbled around for a second there. Okay. This one thing about this game that I can say without spoiling anything is that although it is in a fictional galaxy, going to fictional planets, it is very much rooted in science and scientific theory. And that is core. So while it feels very different and alien, it is also still trying to hold to the laws of physics within its own galaxy. So it bends them a little bit, but never to the point of like, I have no idea. Well, you don't know what's going on when you experience it, but there is an underlying law to it all, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And therefore, the game itself, as you learn more about these laws, that's also how you learn how to play the game as well and progress. And so I would say,
Yeah.
just to say that it is very much rooted in science and scientific theory. The other thought
Good
that I had that kind of goes along that is just if this sounds intriguing to you, yeah, go and play it. I would say if you like the video game Portal, you will probably like this game. That's
Yeah.
kind of the closest like corollary I can think of, because I totally agree with you, Mark. I think this is a unique game in a number of different ways, but that's kind of the closest one, you know, kind of a physics puzzler. While this is much more exploration than puzzle, there are puzzles throughout it that you figure out through learning. I'll just say that. I'm done. That's it.
I don't know
Yeah.
though. I mean, like I feel like, yeah, and I think Portal is like a good sort of like handle in sort of like Portal is like kind of like the dumbed down version of this, where like it's very physics driven, right?
I'd say simplified version of this.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, but it's like like Portal,
Streamlined.
yeah, is sort of like it's I hate calling it basic because that's like it's so elegant in its execution, and it's like
Portal,
just
the first game, it executes on a single idea really, really, really well. This game has multiple ideas interacting with each other.
yeah, yeah.
Again, won't go into detail because it's all spoilers.
Yeah.
I'll note too, it also gets compared to Myst a lot, which I have not actually played,
Okay.
but that kind of like first person adventure, not knowing where to go, kind of trial and error.
Yeah.
So
I can actually see that. I don't know. Have either one of you ever played Myst? Okay.
Sorry, Paul.
Yeah. No, that actually might be a good one to
Missed
put
it.
on the list sometime. Mark.
Yeah, man.
You're welcome, Josh. I got you.
I missed it too.
But Myst might be a good one because like yeah, a lot of and again, we'll see, but I do see a lot of like a through line in just sort of like the way that game is built, like in the same way that Outer Wilds gives you Outer Wilds I think is a little more streamlined in how they give you them, but like Outer Wilds gives you all the tools and information that you need to progress, and Myst does the same thing. Myst's like logic is elegant and like it is like literally if you can't figure it out, it's because, well, it's it's because you're dumb. Yeah, and
Rude, but fair.
I say that
I am.
throwing myself into that category as well. Like there were a lot of times, even in Outer Wilds, there were a few times where it was often like, oh, I should have figured that. Oh, I should have known that. I should that it's like this is totally on me. And I did, like, just sort of full disclosure on my playthrough, I resisted looking at sort of guides for the most part, and I had a pretty, you know, pretty blind run for a while. I hit a couple of there was one planet in particular that broke me. Like just it broke me.
Like a bunch of meteors running into you.
Yes, just it shattered my surface and just left me a hollow shell with nothing but a black hole for a
The
heart.
broken planet broke you.
The broken planet broke me. But if there are no sort of more sort of like, if there's no more sort of commentary, I think this is a good place to sort of plant our spoiler flag. And going forward, we're just going to openly discuss, like, we're going to talk about whatever our little hearts desire. And if you listen to whatever happens, you listen at your own peril. So
we can probably talk a good bit before we talk about the ending. So if you're in like the middle of it and getting pieces, we could probably save the ending till the end.
Yeah.
Unless you want to get into it now.
Well, I think, like, let's just well, I'll tell you what. I'll kick off. I'll kick this off. And it's just sort of like, and maybe this is a bit of a spoiler on where I'm going to land. This is a game I'm very conflicted about, in the sense that I love a lot of what it does. And at the same time, like, I low key kind of hate it. And we won't, like, I'll talk about some of my frustrations. It is one of the most consistent design philosophies in a game I have ever encountered. It's just like they have like, and this is from what I understand too, this is like several, like what we got in this is like several iterations of a project that started as a thesis for like the guy was in like basically video game school, and he was like, hey, here's my thesis. And so, and they kept kind of building and clarifying. And so what you're left with is actually really masterfully executed sort of vision. um but I wrestle with it. Like, there's something about the controls, and while and this is, I guess, sort of like one of my big is, I think I don't have a better solution, right? But I do think there is something to be said about, like, I do feel like the controls in some ways are just, they get in the way more often than not. And some of that is by design, and I just don't like that choice. I'm like, that is not a choice I would have made, because I think you have a compelling enough sort of gameplay loop and world, like galaxy or solar system, however you want to talk about it, that you don't need the added encumbrance of sort of a, it's not overly difficult, but it's a pretty involved um you know, traversal system, because you do spend a lot of time in zero gravity or lighter than normal gravity. And yeah, so but like, that's like, I am conflicted, because I would actually say, I think using the words master's class in design is actually, like, that's accurate, that's apt. It's just,
Okay,
I
sweet.
th-
I
I
thought it was just me.
No, it's brilliant, but it's sort of like what I'm wrestling with is like sort of, and I brought this up to you guys too, is like, this is sort of a game that I'm like, I can look at it and say, oh no, this thing is, it's a masterwork. Like, this is the kind of game that people who make video games should probably play, should probably study, should probably think about, and should be informed by. Um, I also think it's a little inaccessible, and I'm not sure that it's for me. Like,
Sure.
that's kind of where I'm landing, because it's like, and again, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about some of that stuff, not all of it, but I do think, like, a really kind of interesting place to start though is at the beginning, and just how, I think, Mark, one of the things, me, I think you said, is that, like, take your time on that opening planet. Like, there's a part of you
Yeah.
that wants to, like, just hurry up and run off, like, get through all the
Oh yeah.
stuff
Yes.
and
Oh yeah.
get into space. And
Yeah.
that is, you're actually making it harder, because like they build in, like, there's all these, like, I went in and I fixed I went into the zero gravity chamber in the cave, and I fixed the thing. And um of course what I'm saying is, like, that part's a little nonsensical because zero gravity wouldn't actually happen in the core of a planet's center. They actually like the gravitational. If I understand physics correctly, actually the gravitational pull would be a little stronger the closer you get, like the more you get in. Like I think you feel that a little bit more.
Boring.
But I'm just, but it's there's like that, and it teaches you how, like, it really sort of does give you an opportunity to play around with the zero gravity navigation. I think the other thing too is in what are they give you that model spaceship to like
Yes.
fly, dude,
It's only a model.
and it's way like, dude, the actual spaceship is significantly easier to navigate than that
Yes,
stupid
it
model.
is.
Like
Yeah.
that model, it's like the slightest bump and it just goes like cartwheeling. It's just like like yeah. And
Yeah.
I was like, I like the first times and I actually, but what I will say is if you take time in that, like learning to like fly that little model like fairly well, you will actually, that does help. It's like it is significantly more difficult to fly that little model spaceship competently, so that by the time you get into the actual spaceship, you're like, oh, this isn't so bad. Like I thought. Now that did not stop me from just like wildly careening into planets from time to time. You know, like landing on trees or something stupid from occasionally. But I do think it is very worthwhile, and even sort of like the playing the hide and go seek with the two kids, where it teaches you how to use your like sensor scope thing. Like even that tutorialization is pretty well, it's not like, there's a way tutorials can be really clunky and kind of like whatever, but and that's what that is. That first planet is a tutorial level, and
Right.
it's like, and it's just really well. It's finally implemented. It's pretty. I don't want to overuse the word, but it's pretty masterfully done. So,
And that was a lot of my first playthrough, was like just rushing through it. Like I did all this stuff, like check off the box that like I've talked to other people. Like I just want to get into space. Let me go to space. And then like once you get there, it's like, oh, I should have paid attention in school, because there's a lot of stuff that's like all those intertwining mechanics and all those like tricks that Timber Hearth teaches you gets built upon and like combined together in a way that's just really a lot more complex, and that like it requires a lot of patience, and a lot of perseverance. I was thinking about this game as like, this game is not hard in the same sense that like a Dark Souls would be hard, but it's challenging in how much like it requires your perseverance and like your own curiosity and your willingness to grapple with a dangerous environment and like pretty hard to master controls. I say this as someone who's already played through it. Like the controls are very difficult, partly because the physics of it are so like wonky because it's planetoids. Yeah. But it's like you can get there. Like like controls are not a problem for me anymore. Like, and that probably clicked, I feel like halfway through my first playthrough. It does take a lot longer to get used to than you wanted to. But it's a lot of it is like Mario Galaxy, but in first person and just no rails on it at all.
That's actually a really, I think, great sort of descriptor of the traversal. It's like Mario Galaxy with no rails. And yeah, like,
and a lot of it,
go ahead.
Just gravity is like, I forget that gravity exists in different levels. So it's like, I am like, why am I drifting towards the sun? I can't like get to the planet I want to go to. Like, oh, because the sun is dragging me in by the gravity of the sun. And like,
right.
So just like, yeah, that's the stuff you have to actually keep in mind. That's realistic in a sense, but also kind of that like cartoon realism.
Yeah. I mean, but and again, though, it is a very like the game has a very consistent logic,
Mm-hmm.
and in the sense like with that with the physics and everything else. I think there was something, Josh, I sort of did want to double back to this is like that when we were still in sort of the spoiler free zone,
Mhm.
you said that there's sort of like I think the other thing though is like describing this as a space exploration game is also
Mhm.
kind of underselling it because it's also it's a mystery.
Yeah.
No, it's a mystery that like it's a multiple has like multiple wrinkles or folds to it, like right because there's the mysteries of and they sort of even late like when you're on Timber Hearth, right, and they introduce you to the Nomai, and
Mhm.
it's kind of like nobody really knows what happened to the Nomai, and it's sort of like they kind of like say like, hey, a lot of our space exploration is trying to figure out what happened
Yeah.
with this precursor race, right?
Mhm.
Um, but there's another sort of mystery that gets sort of added into this as well, and I think, and I'm going to try and say this is the bulk of this thought, but there when you start to really figure out what's going on with this game, there is a direction that I think most players go, like that I went to initially, where it's like you're trying to prevent this thing from happening. But I think what one of the things I love is that the game unapologetically just says, "Oh no, this is inevitable," and it's almost like it's a bit of a red herring, like in this sort of like, how do I stop this major thing from happening? And it's like you can't, but like it felt like because like I think this is the thing that's so brilliant about this game is that there's all this sort of open-ended tools and there's like it has this very consistent sort of like physics engine sort of logic thing going on, right? And like it's sort of just but it's a lot of the thrust of the game narratively is actually sort of on you. Like you decide which planets you want to go to. You decide what or like and there is kind of an order that may be preferential. I don't think so really. Except for Dark Bramble. You probably don't want to go there right off the bat. If you go to Dark Bramble right off the bat, you're gonna have a bad time. Um, but there's like it's sort of open ended and it's so I don't know.
To
Self-driven, like
yeah,
it's self-directed.
I think that can often be one reason why like people bounce off this game is because
Mm-hmm.
like it's really hard to figure out what's the point of it. Like even
Yeah.
after beating the game, it's like, what's the like what was the main thing you were supposed to do? And it's like
Mhm.
it's could be one of three things, and it's kind of like knowing how the game ends. It's kind of a moot point. But yeah, it's like it's hard to figure out like even what's the goal here.
Yeah. And so I'm gonna push back a little bit on your pushback of saying that it's a mystery versus exploration. The reason I
No,
would
I'm not
say I would
saying it's not exploration. I'm
Mhm.
saying it's space exploration plus. There's this
Okay.
other like the narrative thrust is like there,
Mhm.
and I think again there's several mysteries, but it is like the
Yes.
big thing is like you're trying to figure out. Yes, you said like, but it's like, and I think you said this is like why not why are you here? Why are you doing this? But like there's a like why these things are happening, and
Mhm.
there's like there's several tiers of mystery that I think sort of like you just keep unraveling and unraveling, and even in a way I
Yeah.
think they're a little bit of a red herring because I don't think
Yeah.
they're the point either. They're just sort of
Mhm.
a an impetus
Mhm.
for you, like they are the thing to sort of get you running down that road that is going to kind of like you think is going to take you in one direction, but it's I think that's kind of like the hook
Mhm.
that that if they can set that in you, like if they can set that in the player, that is what will drag that person through the experience.
Okay. I mean, yeah, and I agree. Like, one of the mysteries within the game literally ends with you learn that that an experiment that was taken was a failure. So everything that you learned about this experiment up to this point, like, oh, it didn't work.
That
Okay.
that is not the thing that happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
dang it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, so the reason I have a hard time is when I think of a mystery, I think of, like a murder mystery or something like that. Those typically will set the table and give you parameters of the types of things that you're looking to figure out. I think of, like Ace Attorney or something like that. Where like, someone's accused of murder, something's happened. In this game, it's simply like, okay, kid, go out there. There was a race of beings out there, and they left some stuff in different planets. Go check it out. So you don't even know what it is that you're looking for,
Yeah.
and because I'm conflicted about this. The way the information is given to you is through text conversations between different characters, which I think on the one hand humanizes the characters that the exploration that you're doing, the mysteries that you're trying to uncover. It humanizes them. However, it gives you hints in obtuse way, which maybe I'm just dense. That's totally fine.
No, it's obtuse. It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
But
it's not
what was
very
particularly hard for me was keeping track of all the characters.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well,
who was talking to who, and then they continue conversations in other parts, and I don't know, when there's 5 characters on this planet at one time, and
Yeah.
they're talking with each other, and it was
so
very difficult for me to keep track of. Yep.
yeah, but
Yeah.
the way that the Nomai story sort of unravels is it's interesting. The whole like the way that their script works is kind of like bizarre to me, and it's like
Mhm.
that's one of those things where I'm like that's like one of those things where I look at that and I'm like, like I'm looking at these people and I'm saying, oh, you're really pleased with yourself. You think this is really clever, and I can tell that
Mhm.
you think this is really clever. What if you had dialogue that did this and it branched off each other, and it's like. I see what you're saying, what you're doing there, and it is clever, but I yeah I would actually the thing with the Nomai and keeping track of them, I abandoned that. I was like, I tried
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
maybe an hour, and I was like, this is not worth it. Like like I'll take the relevant information, so like I would read what they had to say. And it'd be like, okay, like remember this part. And then when I started using the ship's journal just did all that for me.
Right. Right.
But it's like
It
a lot of times I would just like kind of like I didn't find like their interpersonal dramas that or sagas that compelling. I was like, that was like one of those things where I'm like, it lends a certain bit of credibility. Like
Mhm.
it's kind of like, but at the same time, I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. You sound like you
it
were going to say something there, Mark. So
yeah, it's like you can which I have always since I've played it kind of pointed to Outer Wilds as like a really cool way to do narrative of like how cool is it that you can like almost like read this book in any uh order you find it in, and then it's like playing it again, it's like actually this is really hard to keep track of. Like you can get the general themes. I stopped trying to like you just can't keep track of the characters. There's like one character that I know, like feel like I understand like what they did, what their motivations are, and that's about it. But I think like I don't think you have to really delve deep into the story of the Nomai and the story they're telling to like understand what you need to for the game to complete the game, but even just to like get the story out of the game. Yeah.
no, they're an initial like because like part of the whole thing is like finding out what happened to them. And so
Yeah.
like the initial thing is like you're exploring to find like additional Nomai relics and ruins and all this other stuff. But that quickly sort of, and I guess it's just like without even like that quickly becomes secondary. Um
Yeah.
and it just like I don't know if you how you get, but it's like the first time the sun goes no, and I'll to be the sun, this basically the long and short of this, boys, listeners, is
It's
that
amazing we haven't actually said this out loud yet of like kind of the two major things about the game.
Yeah.
it is a game that happens 22 minutes at a time, and then the loop resets. So that is
Unless you die before then.
well, and that's I actually
happens a lot.
didn't see the Nova. Probably I died a lot. Like because it's and it's the controls. It was the I mean my biggest gripe with this game is just the controls. And while I recognize like there's a part of me that very much admires the decision to like stick to their guns and say like, no, it's like you're gonna have to navigate, and I'm like, this is the least fun part of your game, and it is the part like it is the biggest sort of hindrance to like and again, well, but it's so I died a lot. And then when I finally saw the sun go nova, I was like, oh, I was like, that's kind of like what was so frustrating is that like I'm progressing and I'm sort of like hunting down and running down all these like different story beats, and I'm following all these leads, and I'm like, I keep dying. I'm like, okay. And I was like, I realized that there was something to do, because they're in that beginning part where you have to go get the codes and you look at the Nomai mask thing. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, that's their whole, like, that's their conceit for like why you just kind of like, that's like, they wanted to make a time loop game. That's the hook. Okay. That's fine. But then like even sort of like the way that they build out like how it's very like, no, it's this 22-minute cycle every time, and there's a very specific reason for all that. And but yeah, so I didn't see the Nova for probably at least the first hour and a half, 2 hours of the game, because again, I died a lot. I was fairly reckless though too, where I was just like, like after I died that first time, I was like, there's nothing. It's like, just like, just like, will this work? Nope, that will not work.
Yeah.
So
the last thing I'll say about the beginning of the game is that I kind of wish that there was more, that you were given a task, that your character meant something, that there was just something there to connect you to the character that you were playing as. Because pretty much the way that people talk to you was like, oh, hey, you're going to go up into space for the first time. Cool. And that was about it. At least that's yeah. From my perspective, it's kind of like, okay, well, what is it? Maybe I feel like an actor here. What is my motivation? Like going into space is cool. Don't get me wrong, but I just honestly, here's what it is that I was so in the dark at the beginning of the game that for the first half of the game, I'm wondering like, does this character have amnesia? Was he a part of some stuff that was going on? Is his backstory going to be revealed? Am I really, because it's first person, you don't go in front of any mirrors, you don't know what you look like. Like, am I a part of what is going on here? What happened? Whatever. And no, none of that is ever there. But it just, it was just a part of that kind of darkness. Sure, mystery, if you want to put it that way, but just that openness of kind of pour into that meaning, whatever you want.
It does very vaguely gesture in a lot of different directions, because there's the guy you talk to in the observatory where you get the launch codes. Like the guy that gives you the launch codes, he just asks you like, hey, what do you want to do when you get to space? And there's a list of like 6 dialogue options, and that's kind of giving you your options, but it's like,
okay,
that's also 6 options to choose from, and one of those is like, I don't know, I'll find out when I get there. And like, so it has a system of maybe like why don't you try doing this first? But they're really like, that is kind of one of the hardest hurdles to get past is like the what's my motivation? Like, what am I supposed to be doing here?
Mhm. Yeah.
So I totally get that. I think it's a huge challenge.
Yeah, and I had alluded to it before, and I didn't want to kind of get too but it's the fact that like the thing is, I think for a while, even the way I was playing it, it was like, and I had said this before, but it's like for a while I thought like my goal was like find a way to stop the sun from going nova.
Right.
Like I thought that was like kind of the point of the game is like you've got to
Right.
sort of unravel this thing so that you can be in the right place at the right time to stop the sun from going nova.
Yeah, I
But
pretty
that's
much thought that until the very end of the game.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's like no.
Yeah.
The sun going nova is always inevitable. Like there
Mhm.
is no way to stop it. So I kind of I love the fact that there's a bit of a false flag there for like
Yeah.
so much of the game where it's like you think that you're and they're like no, you are never going to stop this thing.
And like the game never tells you at any point of like, hey, you gotta stop the sun from exploding. Like it's
Yeah.
just it
Sure.
never
Yeah.
suggests that as an option. It assumes you're going to think that and works off that assumption.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, that's a good point. Because even as you're reading what the Nomai are doing and what they're researching, I guess I just had that implicit assumption of like they're trying to figure this out as well, and that's why, or what did they do to cause it? Also, was part of the thing that red
Yeah.
herring that I talked about earlier,
Yeah.
of the
Well,
failed
because
experiment, the sun station. I'm like, oh, what are they doing to the sun that causes it to happen, and how can I
because
reverse
every
it?
time you wake up, right?
Yeah,
It's this you wake up and you're looking either is it no, it's at Giant Steep. You're looking at
yeah,
another planet. Yeah, cuz yeah. And this blue light just shoots off and you watch this thing kind of explode and every
yep,
single time you wake up, you see that.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
it like even there that's kind of a false flag that like hey, this thing that's shooting off there. It's like, and everything you're reading about with the sun station about how like like this prior race had this plan to make the sun go nova on purpose because they were going to harness the energy for this other thing, um, and try to. So the thing is like the Nomai story is fairly simple, and the thing is one of the things you learn is that they were there's a species of spacefarers. They're just explorers and scientists, and that's all they do. They just explore and do science, and they got stranded in this solar system. But the reason they came to the solar system to begin with is because they were following the signal of this thing called the Eye, which is just this. And once they got here, they couldn't. They lost the signal, um, and then they also got stranded by a space weed, essentially, um, and so
did they lose
they're
the signal? Because I thought that's what the
they
vessel was aimed at.
no, because the vessel like they went to the coordinates that they had for the Eye,
Mm-hmm.
and it dropped them. It basically took them to Dark Bramble, um, and then because like there's in the I think it's in the sun station. There's a map and it
Mhm.
shows you the Eye, and the
Yeah.
Eye doesn't have like a regular orbit. Like
Okay.
so there's a couple things in there.
Yeah.
Like the one, it's like so you have like the concentric circles of the planets orbiting the sun, right? And that's pretty big. And then when it shows you the path of the Eye of Eternity or whatever it is, like that solar system map gets very, very small. And
Yeah.
this giant thing. But even if you're following it, it's like it will just change direction, appear in different places. It's bizarre. And so like the thing is, and that plays into with their whole like the quantum mechanics stuff that they start
Right.
toying
Yeah.
around with, and the quantic moon, um, and all of that. And so there's just kind of like, and again, even the stuff with the quantum stuff, but you know, yeah, but the story very like when you're actually in the heart of the game, the story very quickly. It's like I think the more like it's interesting, but it's not even an essential mystery. Like how did the Nomai die?
Yeah. Which
Because
you can find out how.
you
And
can
it's like,
find
it's
out how.
incredibly sad.
It's yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's also like, dude, climbing onto the interloper sucks. Like
Oh, yeah. That's
I
true.
did that a handful of times, and I was just like, and then when you find out, like it's sad, but it's also kind of like disappointing. Like it's like
Yeah.
I flew out onto this stupid comet, um, and I climbed in here just like, and I had to wait till it got kind of close to the sun, and and you can fly off the interloper fairly easily because it doesn't have a strong gravitational field, which I'm like, oh, that sucks. Um,
Yeah, I mean, which of course it doesn't, because it's like a comet.
it's a
You know,
comet.
it doesn't have
Well,
very
and
much
that's
mass. Yeah.
that I think that kind of leads one of the things, Mark, is like you said this game has lots of unintentional slapstick. And it's like it's only funny the first half dozen times some of these things happen. After that, it just becomes like grating. But it's like, it's like you get good enough to the part where like you can land on the comet fairly easily and you can sort of navigate it, and then something happens and next thing you know you're kind of thrown off the comet and you're just floating through the void of space, watching your ship just kind of like, you know,
Yeet.
you just yeah. I think and I know it's a bit of a spoiler, as I told you, Mark, the one time. It's like there's this there's a physical there's this thing called the quantum moon, and there's all sorts of like rules and how you can engage it and actually approach it. And I was telling Mark the one time I finally got onto the quantum moon and I felt so smart. And that was like one of those things where I figured out myself and I was like, oh yeah, like I'm the smartest man alive. Yes. Yeah, everybody praise me. And so I'm exploring the this moon and I'm trying to get to the North Pole because it's like the the things that you read tell you like, hey, you need to get to the North Pole of the moon, the quantum moon. So I'm doing that, and there's a bunch of like the bramble seed things. There's a giant wall of them. So I'm like, well, hey, let me jump over these, um, like see if I can like sort of like jetpack over it. And the minute I did, I popped up, and the quantum moon disappeared out from underneath me, and so I was just floating through the void of space, like literally by nothing. Um, at which point in time, and that's also when I found out, oh, hey, you can actually, after you run out of fuel in your suit, you can vent your air as additional fuel. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's when I found that out.
Just doesn't last very long.
No.
You die a lot in this game. Like
Yeah.
it's that's just part of it.
Lot.
Yeah.
And for a game that happens 22 minutes at a time, it is an obscene amount of dying. Like,
Yeah.
but
On the quantum stuff, I think that is one thing that's like, I'm reflecting now, I feel like is pretty unique to, like, that's just one like kind of core mechanic of the game that's like I haven't really seen anywhere else, where it's like the quantum rule where
Mhm.
like, and this is, I'm gonna hack my way through it because I'm not sciencey at all, but like the quantum rule of you can't actually measure the speed and the location at the same time, and so this quantum matter.
The more
Yeah.
certain that you are of a location, the less you can know its speed, and
Right.
the more you know about its speed, the closer you get to having a precise understanding of its speed, the less you can know about its exact location at that, or in that permutation.
Yeah. And so the way the game plays with that is like there's objects that will be constantly moving, quote unquote, but like will stop when you observe them. But like if you turn around and turn back around, like it's gone and it's moved to a different location. And it's like it's a very weird and disconcerting experience, but it's also like
Yeah.
used in a lot of really cool and clever ways.
Well, and that I think that was like the thing is like getting to the quantum moon felt like such a high point and like
Yeah.
getting to it, and I was like, oh, this is going to be like the end of the game. And then you get there and it's a really interesting exchange with the last semi-living member of the Nomai.
Schrodinger's Nomai.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Schrodinger's Nomai. Um, so yeah, you do meet a Nomai if you get to the quantum moon, and um, but like frankly, I felt like it was pretty underused. Like you get to the quantum moon, and there's like a couple other places where you use like sort of that quantum rule, where it's like if
Mm-hmm.
you're observing it, the thing has to stay in place, and that also applies to like if you have a picture of that thing in that state, it locks it in. Um, but then, but yeah, and I just felt like no, and that sort of even sort of compounds. It's like that's a really interesting hook, a really interesting rule, and they leveraged it in essentially one major way, and then they just kind of like it drops off, and it's like it's not really practical or useful after that, and that was really frustrating, especially seeing how they chose to end, how they chose violence towards the end of the game.
Which I do feel like you get to that exchange with the Nomai, that's kind of like coming up to a false peak where it's still like
Yeah,
I thought like that was really satisfying to like have a conversation in like a conversation in a really unique mechanically way.
Yeah.
And it's like that's the end of the line for that like mystery almost. And so there's still the end goal peak higher up to get to. But I enjoyed kind of like seeing that thread through to its end, at least.
yeah.
It was honestly more satisfying than the actual ending.
Yeah, well, and that was like kind of like, and full disclosure here, guys, I reached an ending, but not the ending that Mark and Josh did, which is
Mm-hmm.
sort of like the canon ending or the good ending. Um,
The ending you actually play through. You know.
well, I mean, I rolled credits, and mine is technically an ending. Like I
Right.
checked, there's like 7 endings to
The
this game.
the fact it rolls credits is hilarious. I like laughed out loud. Like I
Yeah.
did die
Yeah.
and got a "You Are Dead" screen, and then the credits started rolling, and I laughed out loud
Yeah, so that's
the
that's the
first
thing.
time.
There hits a point, guys, where you can actually like you break the temporal loop that you're in. Oh, and you find out that
Right.
you've been doing it for like billions. It's essentially it's and even there, the question of like it's it's really what's happening is it's not really time travel. It's not like this sort of like it's not an actual time loop. What's happening is that you're synced up with that Nomai mask, and then when the it's so playing with the laws of causality here, right? This is kind of how this works. But when the sun goes nova, it sort of empowers a protocol like that failed the blowing up the sun thing, like that actually the sun going nova actually empowers this system that captures some of that energy and actually shoots your stored memories from 22 minutes into the future back into your brain. So when you wake up, there's a 22-minute cycle. It's not the same life over and over and over again, but you have these memories of a previous existence that get shot back in time. And so it's like that's kind of the reset. It's not you're not actually dying. Because that's not how they like because there's this whole thing about how like time works and how they basically they find a black hole, they fall into the black hole, and then they figure out that you can like warp around with it, but then they find that there's this time dilation thing where that things actually entering the black hole, when they come out of the other side onto out of a white hole, they actually come out before they technically go in, right? So they take that principle and they sort of blow it out, and they're like, hey, if you shoot enough juice into this thing, you can shoot back something 22 minutes. And so like that's how you get that. That's why it's very specific with that 22-minute window. But again, it's a completely arbitrary number. They could have chosen 11, or
11 and a half?
they could have chosen 11 and a half. They could have chosen 33. They could have chosen a flat 30. 42. There's a plurality of numbers that they could have chosen. But they went with 22. And it's not, it's, but the whole thing is just, and we're kind of getting a little long in the tooth, and we haven't even talked about the planets. So like and this is, I'm just going to I'm going to talk briefly about Brittle Hollow, which was, and again, I mentioned a planet that broke me. And this is, I have 44 hours into this game. Now, not sure how much of that is all actual playtime. Because there are times where it's like I'd turn the game on and I'd start playing and I'd pause it and I'd go do something else for a little bit and I'd come back to it. So, like even if we discount like 10 of those hours, I still have the bulk of my time was spent navigating Brittle Hollow.
Oh, wow.
Because there's these, so essentially, guys, this is a plan, and it's super cool in theory, and it actually sucks in execution. And I say that because it's super hard to navigate. It does.
Nate's just bad at the game.
It's obnoxious. But it's a hollow planet that has a black hole core. Okay. And it also has a moon that fires off these basically comets into that break up the planet, right? And so, and all I'm going to say,
be asteroids, right?
Whatever they are, it's a moon made out of lava.
Yeah.
So that's kind of nonsensical to begin with.
Pretty cool, actually.
It's kind of cool, but it's also complete nonsense. It also has like volcano peaks on it that spit out lava, meteoroid, asteroid, comet, whatever.
Lovely place to be.
But when the Nomai landed there, they were like, "Oh, hey, the surface gets bombarded with this," so they built a city underneath this. And so, but part of doing that too is like, so now you need to traverse underneath a city. But there's whole sequences where they have these like basically these crystals that affect gravity, that when the crystal's there, it creates an artificial gravity field so that like you can walk upside down. And in particular there are these like sort of like these gravity slingshots. And that was the part that kept killing me. It wasn't, it was by the time I would get to the slingshots, they were sort of misaligned enough that I would have to like rocket into like jetpack into another stream. And
yeah,
I probably missed those a dozen times. And then
I know I was joshing you. It is incredibly difficult. Like it's a very hard sequence of the game to like navigate Brittle Hollow.
And it was the first planet I really went to.
Ooh.
Like I went to Giant's Deep, and I was like, "Oh, this is like a cool water planet." And I explored like there. To be fair, I don't think there's a ton on Giant's Deep. Like,
yeah,
I think it's probably the least dense. It's like you meet the other traveler, you kind of like you can sort of, there's that little area that you can kind of, and it's like, and then you can. It's not to say it isn't interesting. Like its whole thing is pretty wild. But Brittle Hollow, I think, is the most dense as far as just like locations, and I think rightfully so, because that's where that was the Nomai's chief colony. So, but there's just like tons there to explore. But then you're on this like pretty strict timer, and then the city, and there's actually like a giant bridge that you can cross if you're quick enough. But then as the planet continues to degrade and get battered, like that bridge will actually break apart, so making that part of the city inaccessible. And it was like the thing that I spent the most amount of time doing, and I think I actually texted you, is but when I was trying to get to the observatory and the path to get to that, there's those gravity slingshots, and so you got to ride those out, and then you got to kind of like boost or drop into another gravity path thing. But I finally got to the point where I was competent at that, so I'm like navigating that just fine. I get to the next part, and there's like those pink or purple crystals things, and I'm walking, and all of a sudden I see the thing. It's like there's no more purple crystals. The path ends, right? And I'm like, what is going on here? And so I'm looking around. And I'm like, oh, I've got a jetpack over there. But you have to jetpack just gently enough so that gravity takes effect and you don't bounce off, which is a lot trickier than it sounds. Because you also need to have enough thrust because that black hole is constantly pulling things into it. So it's like you've got to have enough thrust to like cross this gap, but not too much thrust, because if you go too fast, you'll either bounce off or kill yourself. And I'm like, and that I probably, again, a dozen times easily on that gap before it stuck.
Woof.
Like, and I was just disgusted. Like, and then when you get to the observatory, it's like you get in there and it's like, this is so dumb. Like it was information on, because like in the observatory they had information on how to penetrate the current on Giant's Deep, and then I was like, this is like, which is something that frankly, like if I had just been paying more attention to, I probably could have just observed that single whirlwind or hurricane or whatever, twister or water spout, whatever.
Sure.
So, but
And that's part of it, is like you could even just accidentally hit it and like get into a key part of the game just on sheer accident. But
yeah,
but yeah,
Josh,
Brittle Hollow broke me. Like that was I spent the overwhelming majority of my time, and there's so much there though. There's so much there. Like there's the sunken city. There's all that stuff. It's just, yeah.
Wait, the sunken city is on the Twins.
No, the sunless city is on the Twins.
Oh, you're right. Okay. Yep. My bad.
Yeah.
Tale of Two Cities.
So let's talk about some of the other planetoids. Like Brittle Hollow sucked. It's brilliant, but it also made me crazy.
That's my favorite. I like it a lot. I think it's cool. It's also the one with the banjos there, so I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Well, that's why it's your favorite. It's the dude with
I'm
banjos
biased.
there.
Josh, do you have a favorite planet?
I mean, I probably spent the most time on the Twins between all the different things that you're doing there. It did get frustrating because you're on a time crunch. Certain things open up at certain times, and vice versa. Brittle Hollow is similar because pieces of it are breaking apart. So you have to do certain things before those things happen. I'm trying to think of the other planets that there were, because oh man, Giant's Deep, I don't know, the water freaked me out a bit, especially with how like crazy it was, although there were some cool parts in that, especially with the gravity walls that you could kind of walk across that were pretty cool.
The fact that it launches all of those islands into, basically sort of right at the periphery of its gravity field and then pulls them all back down. Like, I thought that's really pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
It's also a pretty easy way if you're in the wrong place to get splatted.
Yes.
Sure. Or just totally lose your ship. It's like,
that too.
I don't even know where it ended up. Although I kind of resigned myself to dying. Like, I don't know about you guys, but anytime I got somewhere new and it added to the log in my ship, like, guides or things like that are like, okay, now get in your ship and go to this new planet. And I'm just like, no, I'm going to meditate. Like,
reset.
Yeah.
Meditate.
Yeah.
Let's
Like,
start
no,
over again.
I'm done. Like, I don't think I'm going to keep traveling in this go around. Like, not a chance. But I did not learn to pilot or land very well until towards the end of the game. So
but talking about the twins though, it's like one of the things, Josh, is like yeah, like there's a timer thing, and it's like guys, like, and again, it's like this game is so cool because it's these two little planetoids that are they're locked in a sort of an orbit with each other as they orbit around the sun. In addition to that, there's sort of this like almost like gravity tunnel that it tells us that it goes the other way, but it's only ever when you're like in that 22-minute cycle that we're in, it's only one way. But they're basically like covered in sand, and they take turns pulling the sand off of each other. And that's how you gain access to different parts or lose access to different parts. And so that's why that planet is on a time. Those two planets are on a timer. So it's Ember is the Ember is the one that's pulling. There's a
The
nomad
rocky one.
yeah, there's a nomad colony on there that was abandoned or whatever, but in order to get to it, you basically have to make a beeline for that planet, make a beeline for that spot, and then to find out anything, you have to like basically go tearing through these like tunnels so that you have a half decent amount like window to explore them. And there's a lot of really cool information. Then on the other side, you actually have to wait until a lot of the sand gets pulled out so that you can explore these tunnels that are or these towers that are a key part. It's insane. It's like, and again, this is like absolutely brilliant design, through and through. I mean, Giant Steep is like, I think that's probably where I mean, a lot of people, well, Adel Rock, Timberhearth's Moon is probably the first real target, but I think Giant Steep is probably the next progression point. And then I think you can do Brittle Hollow or the Twins and sort of get a lot of the story beats, but you need other ones to fill out the gaps.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you got Dark Bramble. Dark Bramble sucks.
Yeah, it does.
It's
spooky.
It's creepy. It is. Josh, we made the Silent Hill 2 reference, but basically at the core of this, it used to be an ice planet, and then an intergalactic, interdimensional weed thing grew into it, exploded the planet, and when you fly, you can fly into this like knot with your spaceship. When you get in there, it's basically like a bunch of fog and all these points of light. And if you're not careful, those points of light will basically turn into giant space anglerfish and eat you. Yeah, but it's a lot bigger on the inside. It's like the TARDIS. It's a lot bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Only
right.
Like much more compounded in that. But so
Josh, what was the actual Silent Hill comparison you're going to make?
Yeah. So my comparison has to do with my experience and kind of my overall thoughts in thinking this is a very unique game. The three games that came up in my mind for different reasons that it reminded me of. One was Portal, like I said, because of the physics puzzles and the way that this game works. But like we said, on a bit more of a complex way. So at the end of it, so this is jumping after the ending. In thinking about this game, I feel about this game and my experience with it that it is a combination of Nier Automata and Silent Hill 2. My experiences with those games, not in the sense of gameplay. Right, exactly. Not in the sense of gameplay, and even saying that it's like you have to be deep in spoilers because one of what this game ultimately is saying, or what I believe it's saying and where it goes, reminds me quite a bit of Nier Automata. And we can get to that in a moment. The very end of the game reminds me of that. The other comparison is 2001: A Space Odyssey, but and I think that's apt as well because I didn't like that movie. Silent Hill 2, because I feel very similarly about that game and this game, that in different ways. Silent Hill 2, I very much I think it is extremely well designed in what it is trying to say. I think this game is very well designed in its mechanics, not necessarily in what it's trying to say, but we'll get there in just a moment.
Sure.
So I very much respect and Silent Hill 2 is a game that, man, I hold in very high regard, that I did not enjoy playing. This game is not that close to that. I did enjoy playing some of this game, but I found a lot of frustration in playing the game until I started using a guide. And I hated the fact that I had to resort to a guide. Part of it was the time crunch to actually get this episode going, my lack of time that I'm able to play games. And so it was the times that I would continue to go back to these planets, maybe get a ship log or two, not know what that has to do with anything else, not know until you go back to the ship, oh, there's more to explore here. Okay, so I need to do this 20 minutes over in order to explore a little bit more, but I don't know when that ends. And it's not really, okay, it's pointing me in another direction, but I have 6 other directions. And so it got to a point where I was frustrated with how in the dark everything was, that I did resort to using a guide. Now, again, there were moments, I don't want to sound totally negative on this game, because there were moments when, I stumbled across things and it was cool. And there were things that I did enjoy about this game, but I did think it was overall a frustrating experience. And perhaps that's just that I'm not smart enough for the way that the game answers its puzzles and leads you in different directions. But because of my time constraints, the way my brain works, I couldn't hold, all these characters together when I wanted to. I didn't want to spend my first 2 hours of the game walking around Timber Hearth. Like, I didn't,
Right.
So all these things that were working against it, while also acknowledging what we've already said, I think it's an extremely well designed game, or at least it has this singular vision of showing you these theoretical, scientific, experiencing, not just teaching you scientific theories, but allowing you to experience these scientific theories, which I think is awesome. And I think it's awesome that they stuck to that. However, it didn't make for it made for a frustrating experience playing the game.
Yeah.
So I'm of two minds, and that's why I think it's like Silent Hill 2. Not that I disliked playing it as much as I disliked playing Silent Hill 2. But
that's
a
really good touch point, though. It's a really, like, dude, I was like, when you said that, I was like, that's a weird one. But like, the more you're talking about, I'm like, no, it's not to the same degree where I was like, parts of Silent Hill 2 just felt repulsive mechanically.
It was frustrating to even play through with a guide. When I was using a guide and playing this game, when it told me where to go, I was having fun going there. There's a part of me that's like, I hate that I have to resort to this. I hate that I have to have my hand held in order to continue. But actually accomplishing these things was fun. Once I knew where to go, once I knew, what to do, I just hated that it had to tell me exactly where to go. Otherwise, I would have been crushed another 24 times in the Sunless City. As it was only half a dozen times. So that's why I'm comparing it to those. Nier Automata, we can get there in a moment when we talk about the ending of the game. But it has similar things there. So I hope that's not disappointing for you to hear. Because
of course not.
Okay.
Yeah. I even just to reaffirm, like, I feel like my first time I played this game was very similar to that, and I came away with it enjoying it more than you have. But like, that's also because I just enjoyed the aesthetic most of all. And it really wasn't until this playthrough that I like kind of understood the mechanics and how the game is like I was supposed to think.
Yeah.
And that was partly because of like some of the trickier stuff. Like, I remember the solution. Some of the stuff was like, oh, I remember this now that I've done it. It was like I knew how to approach the game in a way that would like be the most frictionless. And I appreciated it more this time, of more of the design choices and stuff. But like, I did the same exact thing where it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to just go through a guide. I don't like that. I have to do this, but this is the only way we actually see the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I did want to sort of like double back where it's like it is a game like I said I have conflicted feelings about this. I love it in theory,
Yeah.
but actually like engaging with it has been infuriating at times. And
Well, I feel so bad that you haven't actually finished it, like, because that last run is I got stuck where you're stuck.
yeah, well,
That I just feel bad you haven't been
and
able to.
so I think this is a good this I mean unless you guys have any more commentary that we need to sort of like hit on as far as exploring the other planets, I think this is a good spot to just sort of like talk about the end. And
Yeah.
so like the thing that these guys are talking about y- after a while,
Here, to kind of cut in, unless you may not already be doing this, but like, I don't think you don't think you have to go into detail on how to beat the game. I think we can talk about the ending without actually having
yeah,
to talk about how to do it. Because I think there's enough here. Like, if you've listened this far and you haven't played it, and there's a lot spoiled here, like you could, there's still enough to
yes.
explore and find out for yourself.
Yeah, so yeah, we
So,
don't need to spoil how the game, like the final sequence of the game, the part that I'm
right.
struggling with. But I do think we need to talk a little bit about Dark Bramble, because that is sort of like your end goal, and like basically what keeps happening. And I was telling these guys, probably throughout the course of today, I probably spent 3 or 4 hours making runs at this, and it was just like one of these games where, like, one of these things where. And again, I'm watching my son. I'm kind of doing some other things in between that, so it's like it's not 3 or 4. It's like scattered throughout the day, and it just I kept getting basically like, oh, my trajectory would get a little bit off. And those anglerfish that I mentioned, guys, they're blind, but they can hear your ship. And so like there's a very tiny amount of boost that you can add, like that you can use, that they won't detect. But it is difficult to feather that appropriately.
Yeah.
Like I'm just very, very difficult. So a lot of times when you're in the bramble, what you want to do is you just want to sort of like aim at something and just kind of go there towards that thing and
You
just
coast.
coast. And so like you sort of like there's that initial thrust. Um and so like and that's basically what keeps happening is that like my I get a little bit off and I go to course correct and I get basically eaten by an anglerfish. And then there's a part where but all of this culminates, and if you do this run successfully, and it's obnoxious, it really is obnoxious. There's sort of this thing, Mark, I think when we were talking about it off mic, you said that you're on a timer, like
Right.
that you have 22 minutes to complete this thing.
Yep.
But this last sequence is just like it's also like it's for so you like you're kind of like up against it, but it's also forcing you to exercise patience, which is like
Right.
sort of like you're wrestling with the tension of these two things where it's like I know I need to be quick, but I also need to not make mistakes. And so you're anyways. But what ends up happening is that you, and again, we're just going to take for granted that you've discovered that you can't stop the supernova. What you can do is kind of escape that, and you can actually do the thing that the Nomai, you can get to the eye of the eye of eternity, or the eye of the universe, or whatever they call it. You can get there. Like you find out through all the different sequences, you get the coordinates, you get you get the location. There's a couple different MacGuffins that you need to acquire, but like, and this final run is like you get like these last couple of pieces, and then you make a beeline for the bramble. And when you get through all of that, right, you you find this ship, and it basically shoots you to the eye of eternity, and you navigate through that. And there's sort of like you walk through a bunch of really interesting visual set pieces. But then it ends up kind of walking you through some stuff and dropping you into a forest where you can basically, depending on how you and the characters that you've interacted with primarily, you can summon a bunch of friends, and then they get together and they start playing the music all together. Because each one of the travelers has a different instrument and everything. But they can all sort of like some, and actually, Mark, in the DLC, you can, if you get the DLC, there's an additional person that can be recruited, an additional character.
Yeah, I haven't actually played it yet, but
Yeah,
I wanna
you
get to
can.
it.
So on, you can do a playthrough. Recruiting that character it sounds tedious. The bits and pieces that I've looked at, and it's like which in a lot of ways the name of the game is tedium. Um, but I
I thought we were
digress.
talking about Outer Wilds, but
Yeah,
I think it's the name of the. There's enough confusion around the title of this game.
Yes, yes, Josh delights in, but basically, I mean, and you guys, since you guys have actually done it and experienced it, I think I'm
Yeah.
just like, leave one of you, like Mark, since you are the in some ways the expert. Why don't you tell them what the ending is? I mean, I've
Sure.
watched it and I know what it is, but I don't have all the right words at this point in time. And since again, you're far more versed and excited about this, so like, and this
So
is going to be the interesting part of the conversation, boys and girls.
none of the stuff we talked about is worth any time. So glad you made it this far.
Yes.
I don't totally understand it, kind of what's supposed to be happening, but the thrust of it is you can't stop the supernova from happening. You can't stop the heat death of the universe. And so you're just with all your friends, you play some music, and kind of a mini sun opens up and you jump in. And that's the end of the game. Credits roll, and at the end of the credits, you get a little title card of 14.3 billion years later, and there's a nice little artwork piece of like a new set of planets, a new set of creatures, kind of just implying of like this the death of the universe doesn't end here, like evolution continues on, and the way that the Nomai died out and your race now is the current race, there's be another race further on, but like ahead of you. And so the first time I played this game, I was confused by the twist of like the world still ending
For sure.
and rolling the credits. I was like I felt pretty let down and was kind of like that's it. That was my reaction of like, I'm like, what happened here? Like, I don't get it. So I went back and I found that Tom Marks editorial from IGN about like how, like, why did Outer Wilds change his perspectives on death? And so he talks about like he wrestled through the death of his father and kind of like having just the twist of this existential dread of the world ending was kind of like flipped into more existential humility and kind of the hope of new life after that, and just clicked of like, this is the best that secular humanism has to offer on when faced with death. Like, that's the best hope they can give. So this was like not a compelling ending because I believe in eternal life and like the coming kingdom. And so that is like the greatest hope for the secular world, is that ultimately death begets more life. And there's part of this that all like, there's some common grace insight, and part of it rings true where it's like, yeah, death begets life again. We're not an eternal loop, but like, and even just of recognizing the smallness of life in the grand scheme of the eternal kingdom. But for believers, like, that magnifies the beauty of the gospel, that God knows us personally and individually, and kind of even in the midst of like years and years, and like trying to think of just the massive vacuum of space and how small we are, like and yet God loves us. And so, yeah, I think like It's just a reminder of this, our smallness and the vastness of creation, but also it makes sense. Like, this doesn't ring true to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, Josh, this is probably where and why like Near Automata is a really poignant sort of like touchstone as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. For those basic themes, I think both games wrestle with futility, and the futility of just, yeah. So I guess spoilers for Nier. Sorry, but how everything you're doing and you're fighting against ultimately becomes futile, at least for the purposes of what you were fighting for, which again is a little just this conversation kind of recontextualizes that, because I guess, yeah, nothing throughout the game actually says you can save the universe. You just kind of assume that. You assume, you're going to be the superhero here,
as one does.
right.
Yeah.
There were a few things though that, as I've thought about it more, that also are kind of striking about this ending for me also. I don't want to necessarily leave what I was talking about near, but we can get back to that in just a second. Similar theme: futility, death. What does it mean in the vastness of the universe? But also, I do think you made it clear, but there's an image as you're descending into the forest of these lights that are there, that it basically shows them as separate galaxies. There's a point where it says, "Oh, these aren't just stars; these are galaxies in themselves." So they're solar systems, and you see, like you said, Mark, the heat death of the universe. So it's not even just the supernova of the sun in the solar system that you're in, or the galaxy that you're in for your game, is just one supernova that happens, and you're seeing all of these different ones going on all throughout the universe. And so it is, like you said, it really visually depicts the heat death of the entire universe, not just of the place where you are living. And then it sets you in this forest, and then you when you summon your friends there, the game also makes it clear that they're not really your friends. These are the memories that you have of your friends. And in making this music, well, let me back up for just a second, is that when I was at the point that Nate is now and died half a dozen times, and I felt like my efforts were futile and I was getting frustrated, I was like, I don't know if I'm actually going to try. I don't know if I'm actually going to beat this. So I watched the ending of the game. And it hit me like it really reminded me of 2001: A Space Odyssey. I find that movie to be boring. I understand lots of people more cultured than I enjoy that movie quite a bit, of just like weird images and symbolism at the very end, and like, what the heck is going on? When I went back and tried a couple more attempts and finally made it and beat the game for myself, the imagery, the music, um, the experience of playing through it myself was much more impactful, and it felt like it made more sense to me actually playing it. Maybe it's because I had already kind of primed the pump. I knew it was coming. And so, but it recontextualized it when I was in control of the different things, to find your friends, to find their instruments, to play, to have them play together. It was a little different than simply watching someone else who knew what to do it, but me flailing around a bit and finding it. And it felt like a bit more of an accomplishment. And then the music, when everyone plays together, communicated something to me that is hard to describe from just watching someone else play. But starting the band together and everyone playing together, and then seeing the smoke that rises up from this fire, that the imagery within the game is you, because you see yourself, and then you turn the flashlight off, turn it back on, it's a tree, and then it basically turns into this fire. So you're the fire, your friends are the people playing music around the campfire. Each one has their own place in this symphony that's playing. And then out of the smoke of the fire arises this new planet, is what it looks like. So the beginning of this new universe together with your friends. And I'll say it was impactful in a way that's hard to describe. Like, I don't know what was different about it, except that I felt like I got it a little bit more. And I think it's what you were talking about earlier, Mark, of just kind of the common grace of like, oh, they're actually trying to say something here. And there is something really special about just living life with your friends, right? That human connection. I think it has to do more with the Imago Dei than this game would acknowledge. But there was something there where I was totally just like unsatisfied and like, oh, this is just a stupid esoteric like monolith of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like, no, I think they were actually saying something more. And I think in the context of the game, it's saying that what really counts is the friends, that you have with you. There's a few things though that I think undercut it. One is that those aren't your friends. They're the memory of your friends. You didn't save anyone else. Two is that you got to the eye of the universe. So everything that's happened was because the eye of the universe had been beckoning the Nomai. Finally, you are the one who shows up. Throughout the game, we didn't mention this. The eye of the universe, the Nomai found out that the eye of the universe is older than the universe itself. So in some way, the eye of the universe has a hand in creating this new universe. There are theories that this ending, that once you go to the eye of the universe, it's trying to say something to you in a way that you can understand. So this whole thing about all these weird things that you're experiencing and visions that you're seeing is the eye of the universe communicating to you. And so I think in the context of the game, the eye of the universe is communicating, you do matter because of the friends that you made. However, the eye of the universe was only able to save one single being in the entire universe. And that is like, what a horrible divine being this thing is, that it allows the death of the universe. It can't save even more than a single being. And it says, and it leaves that being believing the only thing it has, the best thing it has, is the memories of its friends, none of its friends. And so all that to say, with the ending of the game, and again, it stirred me emotionally, but then it's like, oh man, this is pretty hollow. Like, this is a very weak God character. And it's an empty vision of the point of life. And then as I thought about it more, this will be my final point, I'll stop rambling. As I thought about it more, what was the most interesting to me is that throughout playing this game, and the thing that I probably respect the most about this game is that it is this, I think it is trying to allow you to experience these scientific theories. And so it's trying to allow you to follow the logic and the science. And throughout this whole game, that's what it's about. It's about logic. It's about science, scientific principles and theories. And in that sense, it's kind of cold and rigid, notwithstanding, the flavor text and the characters, so there are that humanity in there. But I think kind of the base of the game is the science of it, which is, again, I respect it really highly. But what fascinates me is that they couldn't help but pivot from science for the whole game until this ending, when it delves headfirst into philosophy, into metaphysics. Like the fact that the creators of this game could not just leave this at science, which the whole rest of the game was, and has to make a statement about purpose and meaning and value, and has to make this philosophical argument at the end of the game, just kind of blows my mind. And it should be obvious to us as Christians. And it reminds me of a verse in Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes 3:11. It says that God has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. And that like perfectly was just like, oh, I think I think this game exemplifies that so well that you can't, like, we are not satisfied with cold hard facts. Even experiencing them in a fun way, we have to dig into, as humans, we just naturally, okay, so what does this mean? What is the purpose behind it? What is the value we get from it? And it wasn't the purpose of, oh, I get to save all my friends. It's almost the opposite of that. Everyone dies. But it can't leave you with that. The game can't leave you with just the cold scientific fact of the heat death of the universe. It has to say, oh, but no, there's value in your friends and the memory of your friends and building a new civilization, or a new civilization coming out of this. Like, it couldn't just leave it there. And that's what fascinates me. So I'm done.
Wow. That was a tour de force. That was great stuff.
It's left me with a lot of thoughts. And again, why I don't, even though I've said a lot of negative things about the frustrations that I experienced, like, I don't dislike this game, but it's just like, wow, this is it exemplifies some things. So
yeah, man, thanks for sharing all that. That was great.
Yeah. Oh. And I want you to experience it too, Nate, and just see, am I just weird? But I mean, it was just a little different.
The jury's out on the weird part, but you're in good company. It's fair. I mean, I think all of us could lay claim to that more gladly, and we'd probably all be healthier and happier if we did that. I wanted to just really quickly sort of like go back to something you said, Mark, is that when you first beat it, you kind of got to the end and you're like, what? Like, like, this is it? And I think, Josh, in talking about, like, again, going back to Nier Automata 2, one of the things that you and I talked about is just the futility of that position. Is that you don't have a compelling answer. Like, that is the proper response. Like, that is, like, it is like, you look at that and you go, oh, that's the best you've got. And, you know, and it's like, and it kind of, I remember one time, and I'll try to be coherent here. I'm fading. And I think you guys probably are too at this point in time. But I remember in one of the Facebook groups, that video game enthusiast Facebook groups I was in, I made the claim. There was a guy who is kind of just saying anybody that believed in any sort of God, it was foolishness and nonsense. And I basically, I pulled the precept and I said, according to what standard? You know, I said, who says? And, you know, and he went on this tier, and I said, like, listen, dude, you're using all these objective terms. Like, you're saying there is a definable right and wrong and good. And I said, but according to your worldview, like, you're a secular humanist, you're a materialist. You do not have any objective moral grounds, period. There is no right or wrong, because there is no ultimate arbiter. It's all just some sort of appeal to authority. He got really mad at me. And that's the thing, is like, these people, you know, and looking at this, I think the people who are sort of really impacted by this is like, it's like you said, Mark, it's like, that's the best hope that they can have, like this existential humility. And I think we can be sympathetic, but I think we also know that we have a better answer, and not because we're brilliant, but because the God of the universe gives us a better answer. He says, no, that's not it. Like, he says, I have so much more. I have life, and I came to give life and give it abundantly. Like, and that is, you know, I think, Josh, the other week we were talking about just like the idea of sort of there's a bit of a dread in thinking about what eternal life is going to be, because it's like, what am I going to do for eternity? you know, um, but again, that's sort of a framework that I think, uh, in some ways we need to shed. But uh, I just wanted to say, like, Mark, you said what? That's it, because that's the proper response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that it does, the one thing that I would sort of like a danger is that this game, like Nier, romanticizes the futility. It wants to say, oh, like, isn't it beautiful? Like the cycle of life and death and rebirth, and it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's ugly, and it's kind of hateful, that cosmos that you're like, and it's good and right for us to say no. Like we, and again, we understand why people want to do that. I don't know. And I'll wrap up kind of my thoughts here. Is there was a movie a few years ago, and I think it did not do well, but it had the girl from Game of Thrones, Daenerys Targaryen. What was her name? But the girl who played Daenerys Targaryen,
Amanda something, I don't remember.
Yeah, but she played the female lead in this, and the whole premise is like she becomes sort of an assistant or an aide to a young man, a very wealthy young man who is paralyzed from the neck down, right? And over the course of the movie, um, she falls in love with this guy because he's handsome and he's charming and he's loaded. And she kind of like seeks to draw him out. Like he's embittered and kind of angry and all this other. And so there's a lot of like awkward, like he's kind of mean because he's in pain and all this, but she works to like draw him out of this. And she ends up falling in love with him. And the movie is that, like, the big inflection, the big crisis of the movie is that he's made a decision that he's going to die, and like he's going to commit suicide, physician assisted suicide, at some clinic in Switzerland. And they paint this really romantic picture, and they're trying to like say, like, isn't what he's doing kind of like noble? And she's and the movie tries this kind of like sell the audience on this. And I think everybody in their like their guts is like, nope, this is kind of baloney. And that's why I don't think that, like, I remember walking out of that theater and a lot of people were discouraged because like she's like trying to talk him out of it, and he's like, I don't want to live this way, blah blah. And it's like, and of course they're doing it, and I'm not being very flattering in how they're portraying this. Like they're trying to make it he's being noble and like, and everybody, but I'm like, no, he's a selfish, spoiled child who doesn't understand the gift of his life. And we should revile that. Like, it's not that I'm not going after, like, I'm not saying like, oh, we should, but it was like this, it's the same thing where it's like, this is kind of a sterile, nasty take. And we are right to revile it, to pity it. And that's all I wanted to say is like, Mark, your guts were, your gut instinct was a good one. Now, it's a very pretty, like, I would even say, like, with Nier, like, while the ending is very unsatisfying, it's romantic and it's artful and it's pretty in its own way.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's a part of me that respects it, but it's also like I think we're right to just look at that and kind of like make fart noises at it, because it's it metaphorically speaking. I mean, make fart noises at it if you
fart noises.
Like make literal fart noises at it if you want to. I might even in enjoy, but it's like just that answer that they give. It's like, we are right to not be satisfied with that. We are right to look at that and say, like, that's it. That's the best you've got. Anyways.
Yeah.
So
good stuff.
Yeah.
I think a good place to end is, and Josh, like I said, I was fading a little bit. There's I think I only have one more question in regards to this game.
Okay.
And I'm not like, I have a big fat asterisk right there because we were talking about this earlier, Mark, where did I, did I, did I say something?
Just asterisk did a
word
lot of
choice.
work there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
have
Big
a
fat
big
asterisk.
fat asterisk.
I was like, wow, I am tired.
Me and my
I
big
do have
fat
an asterisk to sort of tack on there. I
Sorry.
I think this potentially could belong on our top 100.
Yeah.
Where I'm sitting at
Put
on
it
the
out.
game personally is like, this is an 8, possibly 7, but I also haven't finished it. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, and I recognize that may recontextualize a lot of. I love a lot of parts of this game. I also think it kind of gets in its own way.
Yeah.
And for there's a part of me, even seeing the end without having sort of done that, where I'm just like, that ending is so unsatisfying on a level. Like, like, I look at it, I'm like, it's almost not enough for me to want to get there. Like, I'm looking at the ending and I'm going, really? I will endeavor. Like, that's all I'm like, I'm not abandoning this. I am going to continue to sort of, and there are some actually other really interesting end states that I enjoy this game. I also think it's kind of inaccessible. And at times I'm like, is this a game for me? But
Sure.
so
Right.
Josh, like, I think we need to at least throw this in a potential contender for the top 100. I think just based on its design merits,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I mean, I see it from that perspective. I don't know that I would put it necessarily on my own personal, because I think you put it really well. That it's not for me. Because even the idea of space exploration, as I've listened to other people talk about this
oh, it's
game,
horrific.
they're fascinated by it, to where I'm just like, yeah, okay.
Oh no,
And
I am petrified by the I'm like, oh, this is terrifying.
well, but in a video game context, it's just not like, I've never played No Man's Sky. I don't have any interest in playing No Man's Sky. You know, the procedurally generated, like, universes that you can go to all these different worlds. Like, honestly, that doesn't excite me. And I'm saying that's me. I understand a lot of people are really excited by that prospect. I'm more excited by something like Breath of the Wild, where it's still exploration, but it's more grounded in something that I know. And there's more to do. You know, like, it's different. I'm not against exploration, but there's something about just the way that this exploration in particular, it doesn't stir me the same way. That, again, like a Zelda game does.
As a bit of a counterpoint, and again, I think we at least need to have a bit more conversation on it,
Yeah,
especially considering that the 2 touch points for you, Nier
right.
and Silent Hill 2, are
Yep.
both on our list, and we're saying,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I can see where it kind of like channels some of that similar stuff.
Yeah.
I think just based on its, like, it's like, the only reason I'm giving it an 8 or a 7 right now is because it's like, it's not vibing with, like, I'm kind of disgusted by that final run.
Yeah.
That final sequence.
Yeah. I
But
highly respect the game and the decisions and the precision of how this game was made, and the fact that it was made by an indie game developer is amazing.
yeah,
You know, that they can have such a singular vision and pull it off so well in certain areas.
it's
Yeah.
a
I mean,
pretty small
yeah.
team, even later on, like, and working with Annapurna, like, it's a very, I like I said, I think it's like one of those things that at least deserves a conversation. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
yeah, and
Sure. I appreciate that.
so,
I think
and
it
I
should
was
be on
not,
there.
I was
Yeah,
not
biased.
sure about it. Even coming into this episode, I was not
Yeah.
sure about, like, how I was gonna, like, but anyways, so any sort of like closing thoughts here, gentlemen, or is this just a good place to sort of put a pin in it and call it a night?
I've said my piece.
My final thought, just I guess, is just even to make it more clear, is when you were talking, Nate, about the unsatisfaction about the ending, and about how we don't believe that everything is futile in that way, is that frankly, because of God's revelation, I believe the opposite. I believe that what we do now on this earth counts for eternity. Like, not only is it futile and will only, in light of eternity, but like what I do tomorrow, God has good
Matters.
works for me to carry out that God could easily do simply by speaking, but he wants me to do them. Like that's and those things. I mean, we've just been going through some of the parables in Mark chapter 4, and it talks about the kingdom of God in so many different ways, but how it's mustard seed, right? Starts off as a small seed, just some simple act of kindness that I can do. And I'm not just about social justice, but some just giving someone encouragement, some speaking, proclaiming the truth of God's word to someone. Just a small act like that grows. It advances the kingdom of God that he is bringing about, that will last into eternity. Not just, it's far grander. And it's not because of me. It's because of the God who I serve, who is grand and awesome and is working all things together according to his will somehow. Look, I don't understand it, but I know that it's true. So I just wanted to say that as you were talking about it, it's like, yeah. And as I was recognizing what, as we're talking about the ending here, is like, I actually believe the opposite of what this game says. So
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's my last thought.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one to sort of wrap this up. But we have a couple of closing forms. So shout outs. Mark, do you have any like last shout outs that you just want to sort of give a nod to, as we sort of like anybody in your community or in the breakdown community, or just whatever? Just do you have a shout out?
I did not come prepared. This is like not self-serving, but like I'll shout y'all. Y'all don't get to get shouted out on your own podcast. So
Shucks.
You make good stuff. You have good conversations. I appreciate the podcast. I appreciate the community. And that's because of y'all, what you're doing. So keep going. Keep doing it. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with y'all for this episode and to share a game that I love. And I just am thankful for what you're doing.
Yeah, well,
and the witness y'all are.
Yeah, back at you, big guy. You're a part of that. Shucks.
It's encouraging.
Shucks.
Appreciate it, dude.
Joshua,
Good.
any shout outs?
Yeah, my shout out is for our fellow patron, Micah Gear Solid. I was talking with him, and actually that's where we got to talking about music and underrated bands. So my suggestion of The Graduate was simply due, not due in large part, but 100% due to his question that he posed to me. And he showed me some of his bands that would fall into that list, Park and Name Taken. And both of which I was like, whoa, these are really good. And I didn't know about them. So Micah, you're a good guy. Love conversating with you. Conversating, I think, is a word.
He's a good egg. Mine is a little broader, but and it's sort of referencing the guys who have been active again in the Onwards and Upwards channel. There's just been a series of things, especially in light of the hurricane coming through. There's just been, and I really do want to sort of give a kudos and a well done to the dudes who sort of hang out in that channel and pay attention and faithfully pray for the prayer requests that are leveled in there. That's pretty cool. That's pretty rad. Also just
nice.
By the time this airs, hopefully but it's for our friends and brothers who are down there sort of looking at this stuff, like hopefully you guys come out on the other side of this and you hear this,
Mm.
and but be as safe as you can be, and my hope is that the Lord preserves you and yours in this. Well, and He will ultimately. But I mean, I also mean materially, physically now. But and so Josh, this is a challenge week.
Oh yeah.
And
So
here comes a new challenger.
We need to sort of just offer challenge updates, and mine has been, it's the same old. I'm just gonna I need to sleep better. I am not doing that thing, especially tonight. So,
no.
Oops.
whoopsie. But how about you? How's the you know what though? I am gonna sort of like level just in listening to that Christ Key by Chad Bird again. One of the things that he mentioned is just praying through the Psalter with frequency, or the Psalms with frequency. And so like I do, like, hopefully like this will stick with me. It's kind of been like percolating in the back of my brain for a little bit. I've also got like 2 or 3 things in there that I need to get out. Like I actually need to make a phone call tomorrow or later today and coordinate some. Anyways, that being said, but I was like, I would like to find a resource or a plan to help me pray through those like the Psalms.
Yeah.
And like he was saying, he's like, honestly, you can
Hmm.
pray through the entire Psalm book of, like, the entire Psalter, essentially, like once a month, like with no more than like 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, sort of dedicated to this. So we'll see. I'm going to find something. I think he was saying like once a month, or maybe it was like once every 90 days. But even then, that's not like a terribly long time. And
Yeah.
so something that would be, I think, good. It's like, so that I would like to just start building that into that rhythm, that habit, that pattern, like praying the Psalms.
Yeah.
I remember I made a snotty comment about singing Psalms one time, and just like how, like, I was, when I was at my brother's church, the little, I was like, where I just wanted to be like, sing the Psalms, just don't talk about them. And it's like, now I'm kind of like aiming that mirror back at myself, like, pray the Psalms, don't just sing them.
Nice.
Oh,
Like,
that's good.
it's cell phone. So,
Yeah.
but
Nice. I thought you
But
said
Joshua,
cell
what do you
phone
got?
for a second, but
no,
no,
well,
I get it. I get it.
I did, but unintentionally. I meant to say self own.
Yeah.
Yeah. As in, I
like it.
owned myself in that. But yes.
Yeah.
Self
owned.
burn.
Right.
Yeah, self burn. That's much better. I'm like asterisk cell phone. Yeah, just I'm just struggling. Struggle is real, friends.
Yeah. Word choices. I love them. Yeah. So my last challenge was to invite 2 families over for dinner. And I have not really accomplished that goal because of the time dilation. I still have some more time. But funny enough, like 2 days later, we were invited over to someone's house that we hadn't been to before. And so we did that and had a good time, stayed for a few hours. And then also, actually, tonight, as of this recording, we had another new couple come to our small group. And we've been talking to a few more as well. We do have a meal together. So it's like, it's not accomplishing the exact goal that I had set, but in other roundabout ways, it's still like the heart of that goal is still coming through, if that makes sense. I don't want that to cause me to then be like, oh yeah, so it's no big deal. Like I don't have to invite my neighbors over. No, I still need to do that. But I also, it's like, okay, the reason I might feel too busy to do that in this past week is probably because I was spending time with other people that I'm getting to know, and it's like, okay, cool. I can, that's okay for this past week. But moving forward, I still want to continue to focus on that. Gosh, you have such a great goal moving forward. that I feel lame in just kind of rehashing another one. But I really do need to start calorie counting, like doing that. I say hardcore. I really only do it for the first 2 meals of the day. I don't do it for dinner because it's a family meal, and it's kind of just like, not that we eat garbage for dinner, but it's just kind of like I can't weigh out
You can't be
portions
present
and
in the
stuff.
meal. Like you can't really be present in that time with your family and trying to like count your portion. It's like the juggling that is kind of a pain.
Yeah. Yeah, and with the ingredients and all that stuff, like for the first 2 meals of the day, I'm planning on like cooking it and pre-portioning it myself, separate from my family. So it's like when you have family meals, it's like I don't want to have to do that for that one. So,
Yeah.
but anyways, I do want to calorie count because I'm a little puffy. Don't want to be anymore. So
I almost said, "Are you a puffy daddy?"
oh no, takes on a whole new meaning nowadays. Yeesh.
I don't, just that was. I mean, I ended up saying it anyways, but but yeah, yeah, but well, I think, gentlemen, this is again like we're really staring at the end of this. We are staring into the eye of the end of this thing, for tonight at least. But Josh, if anybody wants to get a hold of us,
Oh yeah,
where can they do that?
Do it. Love to hear from you. We've got email, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, all that. We've got personal links. All that stuff is on our link tree. That's just linktree.com/the backlog breakdown. Nice and simple. Go check it out. And
Yeah.
before we leave, I know we did give a plug earlier, but go check out Quick Play Podcast. Great stuff.
Thanks.
We both love
100%.
that podcast. There's a link for that'll be in the show notes as well. If you don't want to Google, you can Google, but there's a link there too.
Yeah, yeah, Mark. Just we love you, brother. We really
These guys.
we really like what you're doing over there, and we're really glad to be able to call you friend.
Yeah,
sure.
It's
likewise.
it's fun
Absolutely.
to do
Thank
this
y'all
stuff.
too.
But
Yeah.
gentlemen, I think this is just this is it. This is where we need to just call her. But until next time, Josh, what should they do?
Guys, keep beating down your backlogs, and we'll keep breaking down the benefits.
I am tired.
Time for bed.
Yeah. It's late. Where'd the time go? It's like a black hole.